So Yanni has put an amendment up there which is just getting the ink dripping off it as we speak. Everyone can see that. Yanni, have you got a second for this? Celeste, thank you. Do you want to speak to it at all?
Thank you. Just wanted to recognise the concerns that are being expressed by both the local community board and the local community over the communications around the Christchurch wastewater treatment plant recovery and response. There's no doubt in my mind that we need to do better, and council currently has several things that it's doing in that regard. One is there is currently an external independent review that is underway, and I look forward to getting those results back shortly, so that we can share with the community the lessons that we've learned and the feedback that we've got, and look at what we can do going forward. But secondly, I think what's really important is that the council has worked with staff to reintroduce the daily updates and also the weekly community newsletter, and we are reconvening the communication advisory group to look at what we can also improve. You know, it's really disappointing that we've got the odours back, and I know that we're working hard to look at what we can do to try and mitigate the odours, but what's clear is that we do need to improve our communications around it so the community understand when things go wrong, we don't wait for them to complain, but we actually tell them, and so that they can be aware that there are issues that we're having, and so we can be more proactive. So just wanted to acknowledge the concerns that have been raised and say that, you know, we should just note that so that people know that we are taking proactive steps to remedy the best we can the communications around what's going on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It sort of would have helped the situation a wee bit if you'd done that last night, but never mind.
Aware that community board we're going to...
Okay, so now I just asked for a movement second for the whole lot, which is Sarah, Mark and Aaron for the whole lot. I'll put that motion. Everyone in favour? Thank you very much. Carried. So,
Public forums.
so yes, now we will come back to item 3.1, the public forums, and hear from a number of individuals and groups regarding the Park Terrace Works notice of motion. I welcome back Simon from Papua New Innis, Deputy Chair, and he's also the LGNZ Zone 5 representative. To start things off, welcome back, Simon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And just to be clear, I am making this presentation in my capacity as the regional representative and as co-chair of the LGNZ Community Board's Executive Committee, CBEC. CBEC represents all community boards in New Zealand and is an advisory committee to LGNZ's National Council. We advocate for community boards, which is why I'm here, and promote best practice. With respect to item 16 on your agenda today, Notice of Motion Park Terrace Works, I'm firstly bringing to your attention the fact that decision-making on this project to date has disregarded the Council's delegation of responsibilities to the Waipapa Papua New Innis Community Board and has breached the Governance Partnership Agreement. The Council Community Board Governance Partnership Agreement states that delegations to community boards are guided by the principle of subsidiarity and that issues specific to a community board should be dealt with and decided on within the affected locality. The Council's delegations register includes delegating Clause 7 of the Traffic and Parking Bylaw to community boards. On the 14th of March this year, a report titled Parking Changes on Gloucester Street and Hereford Street was presented to this Council, recommending parking restrictions be made under that clause of that bylaw. And of course, that's the same report that also describes the changes planned to be made on Rolleston Avenue and Park Terrace to implement the on-road cycleway. I note from the minutes that the recommended parking restrictions were accepted without change by the Council. Now, just this past week, Council staff have acknowledged that the 14th of March report should have been presented to the Community Board, not the Council, as it's outside the Plan A area, and have apologised for that error. No doubt the advice given about the project to the Council on the 9th of January this year should also have come to the Community Board, along with any other communications on this matter. And that brings us to today's agenda item. Today's Notice of Motion is a further breach of the Governance Partnership Agreement. The Notice of Motion proposes preempting a decision that is, in the first instance, the Community Board's to make. The Board understands that the public consultation process that's currently underway will lead to a report to the Board's July meeting in order for the Board to make a recommendation to Council on the future of the changes to both Rolleston Avenue and Park Terrace. The Council has got an opportunity to support public involvement with Council decision making by allowing the public consultation process to run its course and by respecting the role of the community board and the role the board has through delegations and the governance partnership agreement. So my asks this morning are, firstly, that it's this council that apologises to the community board for making decisions in March that were the board's responsibility to make. It shouldn't be staff carrying the can for that. Elected members should be familiar with community board delegations and governance arrangements. And secondly, that the notice of motion be withdrawn from today's agenda and that the process runs its course as planned, with community board's role respected. Thank you, that's the end of my submission.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much here. You've got time for one question. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you for your deputation. I appreciate that you're concerned about item, 16. But I was just wondering in regards to item 15, whether you had a view on that as a community board as well.
Speaking not on behalf of the community board, I'm speaking purely from my role as CBEC, and I don't have a position on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Simon. Right, now we have Aurora on Zoom. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me. Audio working?
Yep, excellent. Go for your life.
Kia ora, my name is Aurora and I'm a high school student here in Ōtautahi. I'm here to urge you city councillors not to waste taxpayers' money on getting rid of existing cycling infrastructure on Park Terrace. It's a terrible step back for the city's sustainability and emissions goals. It shows complete contempt for cyclists in our city, and it's a total waste of money and resources. Firstly, I'd like to remind the council of their sustainability goals that they have pledged to. On your website, you've stated that Christchurch City Council has committed to do everything we can for now and for our future with targets for reduced emissions across our district. Our emissions reduction targets from a 2016-17 baseline are net zero greenhouse gas emissions for Christchurch by 2045 and a 50% reduction by 2030. No matter how you spin it, no matter how you might justify it, fact is, getting rid of this existing cycleway is a direct contradiction of that goal. Cycling is the lowest emissions form of long-distance transport we have here. And not only does it keep those transport emissions low, but it keeps our citizens active and healthy, which is a really good goal. We know how much of a problem our high transport emissions are in Ōtautahi. It's stated plainly on your website. Christchurch's main sources of greenhouse gas emissions are from transport, with around 55% of our emissions. We are an incredibly car and fossil fuel reliant city with a culture of using these private fossil fuel guzzling vehicles. Secondly, if this plan to destroy this Park Terrace cycleway goes ahead, it signals a larger contempt and lack of respect for cyclists. Sure, it is just one cycleway, it is just one section of infrastructure out of the larger network, but it sends a discouraging message to those who use bikes to get around the city. Cyclists shouldn't be treated as second-class citizens and prioritised second to those who have the money and resources to own and operate cars. We should be treated with dignity and provided with the resources necessary to get around the city safely. And that means connected cycleways, separated from car lanes to keep us safe throughout the city. When you take away existing cycling lanes, you show cyclists that you don't care about their comfort when they're traveling around the city, and you make cycling that little bit less safe and a little bit less comfortable. This plan is a total waste of money and time. We have an existing functional cycleway. Let's not ruin it. Thank you to those councillors who are planning to vote against this destructive plan. To the rest of you, I hope that you will actually listen to me and other members of the public and hear us when we ask you to do the right thing here. Christchurch City Council, please back up your sustainability goals with your actions. As we at School Strike for Climate say, votes, not words. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurora. We've actually got time for one quick question if someone has one. No, you must have done, you did a very good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good on you. So next we've got Simon Kingham, please. G'day, mate. And there's a presentation, I believe.
Oh, cool, you got it. Yeah, I can use that. My name's Simon Kingham. I'm a professor of geography at University of Canterbury. I think I know most of you. I'm also Chief Science Advisor, Ministry of Transport, so I'm really just here to talk about some of the evidence about cycling very quickly. Why do we encourage cycling? Why do we want to? Number one, air pollution. 2,000 people a year die from air pollution in this country. Over 2,000 people a year from air pollution from vehicles. So anything we can do to reduce it is good, and bikes do that. Second one, physical health. Active commuters have lower BMIs. In countries where you have more active commuters, you have lower BMIs, and the other way around. So again, it's good for physical health. It's good for mental health. We know that active commuters have better mental well-being. Really good report from Minister Wakatahi. If you want to go and have a look at that, just backs that one up. Good for climate change. This research was done by Oxford University, so it wasn't. It was a good piece of research. 10 times better than electric vehicles. So cycling is good for climate change as well. How do we encourage cycling? First thing, most of you might know this already, but there's a very small proportion of people, under 8%, who will cycle whatever you do. At the other end, there are 33% of people who will never cycle. But there's that big group in the middle, 60%, who are interested but concerned. And the interested concerned, we need to know what the barrier is to them cycling. We did some research. Oh, and this applies in Christchurch. This typology of people has been shown to be the same in Christchurch. How do we encourage them? Some research for Wakatahi. The biggest barrier is people don't feel safe. And the key is you have to make them feel safe, and the way to do that is keep them away from fast-moving traffic. And on some cases, that's separated infrastructure. So on busy roads, you have to separate them. Sometimes it has to be engineered and big. Sometimes it can be very cheap, like Park Terrace. And in other cases, it can be slow-speed, quiet streets. So it's a mixture. It has to be a mixture. Shared paths are the least effective and least liked. Shared paths with cars are obviously not good, but even shared paths with pedestrians are not good. So actually, this is where separation is really important, like Park Terrace. Build it and they will come. All around the world, there's evidence that when you build more cycleways, more people use them. So that's good. I can't see the timer, which is even better. Not for you lot, though. And there's all sorts of research from all over the place. Pop-up cycleways work as well. So I guess that's the analogy with Park Terrace. But there's heaps of research all around the world showing that you build infrastructure, people come and use it. How does it work? It works in waves or surges. As you open up more infrastructure, if you open up a big cycleway, you get an increase in cyclists using it then. And you get those interested but concerned people. You're not building for existing cyclists. You're building for the people who are currently not cycling. They're the ones we're trying to get cycling. Park Terrace is a key connector. I happened to use it almost by accident on the first day it opened because I happened to be going that way with my wife, and she said, this is fantastic. We don't have to share with pedestrians. I'm feeling really safe. So it does work, and it does actually kind of link us to north of the city centre when you're coming in on one of the cycleways in front of the museum. Oh dear, something's happened here. Sorry. Anyway, I think there's reputational risk. Christchurch is a great city to cycle in. Build it and they will come does work. We have a global reputation. Unfortunately, this week, Wellington got some award for being the best cycling city. We need to get that back. Let's keep going and grow our reputation. More people cycling has multiple benefits. Good cycle infrastructure is the key, and we're building it, and they are coming. So that's my bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Tyrone? Yeah, fire away.
Kia ora, Simon. So are you suggesting that we should use science, evidence and research to make decisions instead of reckons and hot takes?
We should always use science and evidence, and the science and evidence is really clear that it works.
Just quickly, we've had some assertions that because some vehicles might be slowed up a little bit in other areas because of the cycleway, that it would actually increase emissions. Could you talk to that?
No, that's not the case, because what you actually do, I mean, this is the thing I mentioned the other week about slow speed limits. You actually smooth traffic out. And of course, overall, you've got to look at the overall benefit. So if there were to be any small increase, it would be overcome by the benefits of more people cycling. But smoother traffic is what you want. Yeah. And sun congestion suppresses demand for driving too. So there's multiple ways of doing it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Simon.
Cheers.
Stephen. Sorry, no. Yeah, Stephen, please, from Spokes.
Good morning to Mayor, councillors and staff. Today I'm talking for myself and for Spokes Canterbury. We both support the council's anti-bullying campaign. I'm here to talk to you about the trial cycle lane on Rolleston Avenue and Park Terrace. I used to live in Otatahi as a student, and one of the big reasons I've come back here is the investment that's been made here in safe cycling infrastructure. Nowadays I get around more on a bicycle than I do in a car. This year is the first time in living in 4 council areas that I've felt a need to come and talk directly to a council, first on the draft annual plan and now on this. Our city vision is very strong on diversity, active transport, sustainability, communities and good governance. There's been a lot said about this project, so I went back to the initial briefing. If you read it, I'll put it up there, you quickly get the sense that the motivation was to improve safety and reduce conflict. Some of the issues here are long-standing. I remember in the 1980s, you go through the park, over the Armour Street Bridge, and you're suddenly into city busy streets. The shared pedestrian cycle area in Rolleston Ave has helped a little, but it's often congested and conflicted. And it wasn't going to work through the museum renovation. The solution, an on-road cycleway as a trial, is brilliant. It was extended up to Park Avenue to address some different safety concerns, and it's not all about cyclists. It helps pedestrians crossing or cyclists crossing at Salisbury Street. The two-way cycleway is a really good solution, and the council should be heartily congratulated for it. This is an overall CBD transport plan from post-earthquake. It's the idea of different corridors of different uses, streets where cars are the main mode, streets that are there to help other modes but not exclusively, streets that become boulevards and plazas. Good job. Compared to the 1980s, the CBD is a great place to come to on a bicycle. For cycling, Hagley Park is an entry point into the city from the west, the northwest, the southwest, and also now the south. How do these people then connect to where they need to go? Whether it's on the river corridor, Worcester Street, Salisbury Street, or wherever. The answer is they need a connector up and down Hagley Park. Those roads were busy and tight. There was conflict with other modes, cars, pedestrians, trams, buses. The trial cycle lane is a great solution to this. Again, congratulations. Please keep it. It's not perfect. Some tweaks to improve safety and connectivity could make it even better. I thought I'd also say something about Waka Kotahi's current priorities. Their interim cycle action plan is quite a vision. It's a big change for them, driven by safety and emission reduction targets. It's got safe connected networks, quick build projects, reallocation of existing street space, a focus on short trips and destinations. I was recently in Wellington and saw some of the work being done there with quick fit interim cyclist solutions. I even saw one that had the same marker post as you've used on Rolleston Avenue and Park Terrace. Waka Kotahi funds a lot of our roading projects, some of them at 50%, sometimes at 90%. Given what's on the cycle plan, they'd be very keen on this project. In fact, one of their senior managements told me yesterday she'd been in touch with the council to congratulate them on the project and ask if it can be used as an example for other councils. Could it have been done like this? If Park Avenue had been set up with orange cones like this, would it be seen as an effective trial? Would it be safe for the cyclists? I'd suggest not. We'd probably just have people complaining about a road cone city. You've been making this a car versus bike scrap. It doesn't need to be. On 90% of our road network, cars and bikes use the same space. Where that space is busy, congested, complex or unsafe, then it's best to separate them. The biggest barrier to more people taking up cycling is it's perceived as unsafe. The solution is to make it safe and to make it seem safe. Major cycleway routes are the rock stars of our cycle network, The rest is feeder routes, neighbourhoods, destinations, connections. To make it all work, it needs a collaborative approach, not a scrap. It needs more projects like Rolleston Ave and Park Terrace. I didn't anticipate there'd be any time for questions, but what I did was picked a few likely questions, and if you've got questions along those lines, there's some notes that I provided of the way I would answer them. And the other thing is, I'm wearing an armband today because another person died in a car versus bicycle crash on New Zealand's roads yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No, I haven't got time. Thanks very much. Right, now we have Harrison, please. Welcome.
Morena. I don't actually have a presentation, I've just got some notes here. There's going to be plenty of people talking about the cycleway today. Mine is more in line with what Simon spoke about and the nature of the motions that have been put forward today. It is fairly disappointing to see that the nature of this dispute has been fairly public, when in the reality the majority of the disputes in these reports that are put forward and in the motions is actually an internal matter for council. Disputes between councillors and staff are matters of employment, not a matter of public interest. So it's fairly disappointing to have seen it become such a large thing that it's been taken so with a degree of vitriol actually to the public by elected members. This includes a lot of recent articles, commentary, and it really doesn't show the council in good light when as a member of the city and as somebody who's concerned about this, that I am reading every second day commentary in the newspaper that regards an internal affair of council's own disputes. It doesn't bode well for a council that is currently running on a very low trust relationship, has very poor staff satisfaction and turnover levels, especially in senior departments. It really isn't the kind of behaviour that's acceptable to have seen. We've already heard from Simon that this was running roughshod over the community board's responsibilities and delegations. That is a core part of how the city functions, is the reason the community boards exist, is to deal with these delegations. The reason staff are in teams and we have experts is that this is delegated to them with a reason. They are experts in these fields. They have made these decisions based on good, solid legal advice, a perceived need, and best practice. It's not something that necessarily is liked by some councillors, but it is the reality that staff exist for a reason, which is to provide you with expert advice and to make decisions under delegation. So if you look at your attachments, per clause 11 of schedule 10 of the Local Government Act, you're empowered to delegate this to the Chief Executive, which you did. The Chief Executive then in her role has delegated this to staff, the correct team, who has dealt with this in an appropriate manner, sought legal advice, and done it in a manner that is befitting and proper of council process. The response to this has not been fitting in council process. The cycleway is currently under consultation. It has not been received or looked at by the community board, as Simon said. That is the July meeting. As such, these motions of notice are occurring before there is any fact or evidence to actually support their conclusion, right? We have a cycleway that is in the busiest section of town, is used frequently. I used it to get here this morning. My partner uses it every day to commute to and from her workplace. And it's fairly uncommon to see this sort of behaviour happening, and it's not something that should be expected. I would remind councillors of the code of conduct that actually should govern your relationship with the public and with staff, 5.2, 5.3 and 6.2. And in these matters, I don't believe councillors upholding themselves to the standard that they should in terms of how they're engaging with staff, with the media, with their own social media, which is explicitly stated within 6.2. And I don't actually believe that some of the members of council have upheld themselves to the proper standards that should be held when we're discussing this. It's not a matter of public affair. If I take the council as a business, right, and we take the chief executive as CEO. This makes you a board of directors. As a ratepayer, this makes me a shareholder. If I was to go into this business and find that members of the board of directors had been publicly denouncing or destroying the integrity of my business, I would not be happy. That's my position. I also take this as a matter of if, for example, we look at employment law and one of the people on this team decided to leave because of the commentary made by the highest level of council, that's a form of constructive dismissal. That is an illegal form of workplace environment, right? That's the sort of thing that lands a lot of businesses in trouble. That's not the sort of behaviour we should expect, and it's not the sort of position that the council wants to put itself in a risk environment. That's not something you should be encouraging or even looking at. So I argued that even if you disagree with the cycleway on principle, you must agree with the process, right? Otherwise, what's the point in having a council if due process is not followed and code of conduct is not upheld? Cool.
Thank you very much, mate. Right, next we have Grace from the Transportation Group, Canterbury and West Coast Branch. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou. I'm here as a representative of the Transportation Group local branch, which is a technical interest group of Engineering New Zealand. I myself am a transport professional, a decade of experience, got a master's and bachelor's degree, and I'm a chartered professional engineer. So I'm speaking with someone with a bit of experience with both designing and also, in fact, using these type of facilities around Christchurch. There are two motions before you today, councillors. The first is about removing the existing facility, which was set up as a temporary facility to trial this type of infrastructure. I strongly urge you not to accept that motion. The second motion, I understand, and I'm speaking frankly here, but essentially would relate to censoring council staff, previously mentioned, from delivering this type of infrastructure for your city, which is aligned with delivering the policies and strategies that have been agreed, both at a national and obviously local level too. Your council staff are qualified and competent. I can say that firsthand, my own personal experience as well. And we simply cannot relitigate every single project of this nature going forward. There simply is not time, and it's a waste of everyone's energy and efforts here today. So, that said, right, let's talk to the technical matters at hand. First of all, the existing shared path facility along the eastern side of the river is 2 metres wide. That's a footpath. That's a standard minimum size for a footpath, notwithstanding that it's also bumpy and uneven and can be slippery with leaves at certain times of year like now. The existing facility addresses a really complex urban area. It's very, very busy. There are a lot of people with different needs and are there for different purposes. This is outlined in our submission document. But the existing trial facility really successfully mitigates that width. A key tenet of road safety is predictability. If you can predict someone's behaviour and what they're going to do, you can mitigate it, and therefore you can avoid a conflict which may result in injury, at the very least a nasty surprise, and someone may not want to go that way again, which again defeats the strategies and policies that have been mentioned here today. So a wider facility or a separated facility, which is what the current guidance is, there's a lot of information and evidence around this, would be preferred. And that is what we've achieved today out there, which I also used to get here today. It's my new preferred route to meetings in the middle of town from where I currently work. So it achieves that safety outcome. The other thing is that it is loved. I would really encourage you, if you haven't ridden it yourself, you're making a decision potentially on an infrastructure you haven't actually used, and it's 2 minutes walk away, is to at least listen to the people, get second-hand opinions of people who are using it today, like I did, and I stopped and chatted to, there's a few pedestrians, and I chatted to this young lady here, and she literally said she uses it regularly. She also walks and cycles there. She said that she loves it because she doesn't have to dodge around other people, and she also, it's faster for her when she's on her bike. And I thought that's fantastic because that resonates with my own personal experience too. The other thing is that we have a range of different users along this corridor. That includes not just people who are cycling, but also scooters, people walking their dog, people taking their toddler for, on a new scooter and things like that. What I would like to stress is that this infrastructure could be considered pedestrian. infrastructure actually, not cycling infrastructure, because we've removed cyclists from a high conflict, narrow area, particularly speaking to Park Terrace here, and put them onto a road environment that is predictable, that is safe, that is smooth, and therefore create a more intuitive space for all those road users and motorists alike as well. The other key thing I need to speak to on a technical matter is the road space allocation, which I know has come up and has potentially there's perceptions where the congestion might originate. The Kilmore Street signals is where it will drive that capacity along the Park Terrace road, not the lane capacity. So what we've done is removed the 2 lanes along Park Terrace heading northbound down to 1 lane. It was previously 1 lane years ago anyway, but what that's done is that when you're crossing at Salisbury Street, like I also personally do every day, you're only navigating with 1 lane of traffic at a time, not 2. And so you avoid that masking effect, also that judgment and gap, just judgment is made a lot easier. So there's a strong safety benefit in that case too. So these reasons have been touched on previously. I don't want to really litigate that further, but I would strongly encourage you to both retain the existing facility and be bold to keep innovating and delivering infrastructure that is so loved, and why there are so many people here today to speak to this. We love it. Please keep it. It's a step in the right direction. Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Now we have Storm and Ray. Oh, Ray and Storm, I should say. No, thank you very much.
Thank you. There was no problem on Park Terrace to be solved. There were already 2 cycle tracks, one on either side of the river. Worse, these unauthorised and ill-considered changes to Park Terrace have actually created serious issues. Congestion, not only on Park Terrace, but in all the streets leading into it. Increased emissions caused by congestion. You don't get smoothing of traffic whilst waiting behind a bus in the middle of a lane. Health and safety issues, pointless additional crossing points at too busy intersections. It is not okay to put a bus stop in the middle of the only traffic lane. There is no mandate for this. Councillors need to take decisive action to address this mistake and its consequences and vote in favour of this notice of motion. The productive people, most of whom can't be here today, that is the payers of rates, not the squanderers of them, thousands of us actually, have had enough. This madness has gone too far. And this is not just about Park Terrace. This is a tipping point. Christchurch City Council and its out-of-control staff should know this is the beginning of scrutiny and accountability. Thank you.
Right. So, has anyone got any... Sarah, you've got a question.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you said that there was no problem to be solved. That's probably no problem on the road. What about the conflicts on the shared path?
There has been no issue with the shared path in the last 10 years, not one.
Okay. And when it comes to the several times that the bus has to stop down Park Terrace in rush hour, do you believe that the ability for, or the necessary waiting of 2 or 3 cars behind a bus outweighs the ability for kids to cross the road safely to get to school?
I don't think that's the issue here at all. I think you're misstating the proposition.
So you don't believe that there's any safety issues with kids crossing the road?
I think there are increased safety issues as a result of the changes of the traffic layout.
Okay, Sam?
Yeah, thank you for coming in, Storm. I just wondered if you could talk through any consultation you had on this proposal.
None. And I note that it's been referred to as consultation. As far as I'm aware, and I am a lawyer myself, consultation occurs in advance of doing something, not a retrospective justification of it.
Kelly?
Thank you. would you support the widening of the current footpath on the park side of Park Terrace?
Yes, I would.
Thank you.
Melanie?
Have you cycled along the path in Park Terrace?
I've scooted, along.
Inside the park. Have you biked or scooted in the park?
And walked,
along the path?
yes.
And biked?
No, I don't bike in Christchurch.
So you just walked?
Yes.
And have you...
And I've scooted as well, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you, councillors, for nice short questions. Thank you, Storm. Very, very clear and concise. And thank you, Ray.
Very clear and precise. And no relevant experience.
Thank you, Mayor. Noting we've got limited time, I've given a presentation. I didn't quite print enough, but if you can, hopefully you can all see one. I will ask that you reread this again afterwards. I'll just go through key points now, just I'm conscious of the clock. In just paragraph 1, I've been doing transportation planning and roading engineering for 37 years, nearly all of it in Christchurch. I've been around a long time. I've watched what's been happening in the central city in particular over the last 10 years with a lot of dismay. I've been watching what's been happening with the cycleway network with a lot of dismay as well, but I've actually seen on the Rolleston Avenue thing some really good ideas. So I just want to talk about that. I am a cyclist as well. I don't feel a need to wear a cycle helmet this morning. It's my favourite exercise thing. I've spent a fortune on bikes. I love biking. If I didn't have to work, I'd be biking right now. I want to see more bikes across the city on the cycleway network. What my issue's been on a number of occasions is the fact that what we've been seeing so far in terms of engineering design solutions is just grossly over the top, over-engineered, over-expensive, over-designed and unsafe. And I'm just going to raise the ugly thorn again, Synassa Street. I have a significant issue with the design where you place the cycle network behind parked cars on the street. Paragraph 4, I don't want to get involved in the legality matter. I simply don't care. I want to see the cycleway stay but be improved. How the council went about doing this, look, it's not my problem. You can work that out. A point I do want to make, which is I touch on in paragraph 5, is that there's a major but to what's been done down there, because I'm going to point out later in this that on the council's traffic counts website, which is an excellent resource, it's really good, Harman does a great job on that. There's no traffic counts that are published for this intersection of Kilmore and Park, which is the only issue I want to talk about this morning. There's no intersection counts and there's no link counts. And normally when you do roading design work, you get traffic volumes. Well, where have they got the traffic volumes from? We've just heard about Councillor Simpleton talking about several buses in the peak hour having to be stopped and cars backing up behind them. There's actually only one bus every half an hour on the one route that goes up Park Terrace and stops at the Peterborough Street bus stop. One bus route, one bus every half an hour. I've not seen any information published anywhere on pedestrian count data from the schools. I've sat down there at this intersection for several hours over the last few days. The number of pedestrians that cross the road at Salisbury Street and at Kilmore Street in an hour is about 10. That's actual data. I've not seen any data from the council on any of this. Moving on, planned road function. I've attached to this little submission a map at the back. In great hindsight, I should have highlighted where Kilmore Street is and Park Terrace. But it's along the middle top there. You'll see the dark blue line, which is for a distributor road, and then it connects up Montreal Street to Beeley Ave. Now, I don't know who came up with this 10 years ago, but no one in their right mind heading east down Kilmore Street is going to go up Montreal Street to turn left onto Beeley Ave to go through another set of signals at the Carlton Mill intersection to carry on northwest or west, when you can actually just go straight down Kilmore, right turn and straight up Kilmore. And you see that in the traffic volume. So at the moment, the very eastern end of Kilmore Street, which used to be an arterial, it's now a local road, is actually a 2 to 3 lane one-way westbound route with high traffic volumes. So its function, even though it's been designated as a local road, its functions actually as an arterial. Park Terrace was a minor arterial. For now, some reason it's not. It's a local distributor. Its function is as an arterial if you look at its position in the road network. The road hierarchy is just wrong. It doesn't reflect what actually happens. So paragraph 10, I'm just noting that the Kilmore Street Park Terrace link, so from, I don't know, the Town Hall to Carlton Mill, just to give it a start and end point, that's a critical distribution link for the CBD. It's one of the main arteries. to get traffic out of the CBD, where the council, and I agree, is wanting to get population into the CBD to make the CBD a vital place. You can't have a vital, vibrant CBD if you bugger up the roads. Okay? You've got to keep your arterial roads flowing, and then what you do in between the arterials, so let's just say the arterials are the one-ways, make those puppies flow. What you do inside that 30k, slow it down, pedestrianise it, cycle-friendly, brilliant. But don't affect the arterials because you're going to kill your CBD. It's that simple. Providing for cyclists, what's happened with Christchurch over the last 100 plus years is being flat. The main roads tend to be the shortest route as the crow flies. Papanui Road is the best example. CBD, Victoria Street, Papanui, done. Ferry Road, Sumner, we're squash spider as the layout because we don't have any hills or anything controlling where you put your road network. The outcome of that is that those shortest routes also become the most popular routes for the cyclists. You're always going to have cyclists on your arterial roads. We need to provide for them. The issue that I've historically had with the way the council's been approaching this is that there's been a disproportionate amount of road space allocated to the cyclists. Now, I am a cyclist and I look at it, Harewood Road being a classic, it's just over the top. What I've seen done on Rolleston Avenue, when I went and walked it the other day, I was really impressed with some of the new ideas that I saw, particularly the flexible bollards for separation rather than concrete. Because in my opinion, if you take St Asser Street as an example, you've got concrete on one side, concrete on another, and I'm doing 30k an hour, the only thing, and the staff should be congratulated for it. Paragraph 13, I've allocated there, I think, how you should allocate space in those points A to F. I won't read it out right now. The short version is arrange between do nothing or have actually separated cycle lanes behind the curb. It's point F that I want you to concentrate on. The best thing you can do for a cyclist is actually have the cycleway behind the curb. That's where it's been for the last 30 or 40 years along Rolleston Avenue. As Storm alluded to, I did a search of the NZTA reported crash database. I'll be honest, I'm a bit surprised at this. There is not one reported crash in the last 10 years involving a cyclist going up and down the cycleways or the cycle path. Not one.
Ray, we've gone on a bit further. It's my fault for actually, I didn't realise you were going to speak and I let people talk with questions.
I'm nearly finished because I want to finish on a positive.
Good man.
I am conscious. So paragraph 14, I've touched on that. I've seen nothing from the council staff that came with the numbers that justify what they've done. 15, I've talked about the crashes. I want to go to the recommended improvements. And again, the key thing I'm concentrating on is Kilmore and Park. Removing the dual lane discharge at the west end of Kilmore Street is just patently daft. Because what's happening down there, if you go down and have a look, go down at 5 o'clock and watch what happens. There's just going to be crash after crash because what's happening is people are coming down the lane that's now a left turn only into Rolleston Avenue and they try and jam into the right-hand lane at the last minute. The other thing that's happening, and I've never seen it like at any other intersection, 30 plus years of county, I've never seen so much red light running at one intersection. Because what's happening is there's not enough capacity at the actual lights itself, so people are just running a red light. So what I'm suggesting we do is, I'm not here to say get rid of the cycle lane, I'm here to say make it better. Reinstate the dual lane discharge at Kilmore Park, and you can do that so easily by pushing the cycleway back behind the curb. You need to do a little tiny bit of retaining, which will be that high, and you've got the width, 3.5, 4 metres to be a shared path. On Rolleston Avenue, north of the Armagh Street gates, the pedestrian count is really low because you've got the parallel path inside Hagley Park as well. There is no issue with putting a shared cycle path behind the curb north of Armagh Street. Make that change.
Thank you very much. And I must say that that's a very balanced presentation. It worked on both sides, so thank you very much. Okie dokie. So now we have Meg, please.
Thanks, Sarah. Tēnā koutou katoa. Well, I'm here with 2 other hats on today. I'm an everyday cyclist, but I'm here to represent people who walk. I'm representing both the Active Canterbury Network and the Living Streets Aotearoa. So the Active Canterbury Network, its memberships includes, it's not limited to, representatives from the exercise and dance industry, the Heart Foundation, He Wakatapu Trust, Pegasus Health, Te Mana Ora, whānau whanake, the YMCA and the Selwyn, Waimakariri and Christchurch City Councils. Our vision is that every Cantabrian is engaged in regular physical activity during their lifespan. One of the most accessible and affordable types of physical activity is walking. According to the Active New Zealand Sports and Active Recreation Profile, 60% of all adults over 16 identify walking as a key way of getting their physical activity. This makes walking one of the most popular choice for sport, exercise and recreation, and if you add in jogging and running, that bumps it up to 80%. Swimming, by contrast, is the second most popular at 30%. So that's a bit about the Active Canterbury network. Living Streets Aotearoa is New Zealand's pedestrian advocacy group, and it's not so concerned about recreational walking or walking for fitness, but walking for utility purposes, for getting from A to B, for work, play, learning, or socialising. Some of the pedestrians we represent have no other means of transport, and we hear this especially from the low vision population. The shared paths along Rolleston Ave and Park Terrace have both types of pedestrians, recreational users and commuters. It is a key route into Hagley Park, the Botanic Gardens, the museum, for locals and tourists, mobility scooter riders, dog walkers, pram pushers, the lot. It's also a key commuter route for those needing to access the Christchurch City Hospital campus and the rest of the health precinct, and for students and staff getting to Christ College, Cathedral Grammar and St Michael's School. It's also a pleasant route for others to choose to access the central city from the southwest to the CBD by foot. Except, up to now, it hasn't been that pleasant. The shared path has not been fit for purpose for decades now, with users fighting for space, with people on bikes, and more recently, micro-mobility users and e-bikes. This environment in the heart of our tourist area with picturesque historic buildings either side of the road, the Botanic Gardens and the beautiful Hagley Park means that walkers meander all over the path, and the kaupapa of keeping left is not adhered to, and understandably. And you put into that mix the elderly, the very young, the vision, hearing and mobility impaired, the runners and the joggers, people on cell phones and so on. It's becoming a really crowded space of disparate users. If people have to step off the sealed path and make way for others, or ride off the sealed path, they are at risk of tripping and slipping on the muddy and uneven verges, and that's especially so for the Park Terrace span of this road, the cycle path. So what relative bliss it's been in the last 3 weeks on the path without our friends on bikes. Still not perfect. Yes, Park Terrace section north of Armour Street Gates continues to be way too narrow and uneven. And all along the route, the tactile pavers have not been installed correctly or even logically, but it's been better, vastly better, without having to share with people on bikes. So on behalf of the Active Canterbury Network and Living Streets Aotearoa, I beg you, to retain the very effective and immediately popular cycling infrastructure question. This helped keep pedestrians safe and has contributed to making their trips more enjoyable and comfortable. And in just reflection on the last speaker, I need to speak on behalf of particularly women who find that the bit of cycling and walking infrastructure within the Hagley Park boundary is really scary and feels unsafe after dark. And they're the ones that are going to be using this very narrow path north of the Armour Street gates along Park Terrace. So thank you.